Hello and welcome to Rights and Recourse, a program that educates you about your rights and recourse to those violated. My name is Dumile Mateza.
People have
one equal temper of heroic hearts made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. This quote, the final stanza from an ancient poem by Tennyson called Ulysses, is a fitting description of the energy of the Minister of Human Settlements, Ms. Lindiwe Sisulu, in driving the provision of habitable settlements to the indigent in South Africa. This was evident at the 2014 National Human Settlement Indaba that ended in Johannesburg on Friday. Today on Rights and Recourse, we take a critical look at the challenges faced by the state in the provision and the future of habitable human settlement. But before we get into this discussion, let us have a look at this insert.
750 people have come together to donate their time and money to building 67 houses in 1 week. This is it. This is the moment. We're on our way to site. But what you might not know is that the hard work actually started months ago.
Our new strategic direction is about not just building homes, but building communities and hope as well. And the key for that is to get the community involved, to be right at the front and center of all of the work that we do. So we don't come along to give a handout. We don't believe that's the way to go. The way to empower people to build their own sustainable future is to give a hand up.
I think the unique thing that Habitat South Africa is doing is really focusing on what happens with the community after the houses have been built. So they want to focus on developing the community spirit and bringing the community together. And I think that's a really important part of moving a house into becoming a home.
So before these foundations were even set, Habitat has been working in this community, ensuring that the development you see happening today would be sustainable.
Habitat's role is to bring on board the stakeholders who can provide these necessary resources for lasting change.
Before Habitat, it was, okay, I'm just here because I'm here. Now that I've found the secret of being a leader, doing what you can do and be effective in the community, it's just been so stunning, simply because now I have the training, I have the equipping, and I can carry that into the community.
It's the end of a long, hard week. And despite wet, windy and cold weather conditions, more than 3,500 volunteers and community residents have come together to build this community.
Today here we see the value of partnership. A number of people from the private sector, civil society organizations, government, and they've turned this whole area into a very big construction site. And as you can see, I mean, we're developing a small town in this area.
We are very proud to be a part of this initiative led by Habitat for Humanity. And it is our belief that for business to prosper, the communities that we operate within need to flourish.
It's only through the partnership with Habitat that this week could work. All the logistics has been amazing, and it's all been about partnership. Everybody's brought their skills together to make it happen.
To be members in here in my ward with my family, because people of Power Construction, Habitat, Old Mutual, there will be history with me and them because they have helped me build my own house.
The lowlights was a little bit of rain, but everything else has been a highlight. We've had an amazing week. We want people to move beyond just helping on Mandela Day, to be part of our work and to be a part of the work that other NGOs are doing around the country any and every day.
The challenge to build 67 houses in 1 week has been met and surpassed. This is the result of unity and partnerships. Become a part of this movement. Join Habitat for Humanity and build the South Africa of your dreams, one community at a time.
discuss today's topic are Director General from the Department of Human Settlement, Mr. Thabani Zulu, President of the Chamber of Mines, Mr. Mike Decker. Gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
The first question, Mr. Zulu, let me come to you, is for over 20 years now, South Africa has just been one big construction site, building houses.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mateza, for inviting us to your studio. Indeed, it's been a very exciting journey for the last 20 years. We have delivered almost 3.2 and above houses to the most needy people in our country. And it's a challenge that I think if you measure it scientifically, you'll realize that indeed the government has done very well in this particular area. Of course, there have been some challenges. This has been an assignment that is not easy. Construction industry is not an easy industry. But I think from what has been done with all the challenges at our disposal, I think we pride ourselves for the last 2 decades for the work that we have done in this sector.
Mr. Decker, over the years, although the apartheid government regarded blacks who stayed in South Africa as sojourn, they might go back to their homelands as they thought, it is the private sector that built homes for the people under the guise the people could not own the homes, but the companies could own the homes.
Well, historically, as I agree with you, and thank you for inviting me, it is imperative to note that South Africa today has a growing population. As we know that in 1996, this country had 40 million people. 2011 census tells us that we had 51 million people. We're sitting with 52.8, projecting to 55 million in 2020. The private sector, and mining specifically, has played an important role in ensuring that employees are accommodated. And at that time, before 1994, we found ourselves in an environment where hostels were prevalent in the mining areas specifically because you had a migrant labor system. Then there was an evolution where mining houses started building houses for employees. And we found ourselves in the mining industry at the time when villages were built in specific mining areas, be it coal, be it in the platinum sector or gold, and those villages beyond mining. The big question was, what do you do? And today, nothing has changed. The mining industry still believes that we need to accommodate our employees to ensure, as the NDP says, we need to try and create accommodation closer to where the economy is, in terms of where economic activity is. And that is important for our country.
Stark reality, Mr. Zulu. I'm not to say the picture behind us is what we see all around South Africa. What are the challenges facing human settlements?
One of the challenges that we've been faced with, particularly in relation to informal settlements, is the challenge of a moving target. As we deal with deliver on the ground, the new challenge comes in and the new demand comes in for delivery of more houses. And that challenge is linked into job opportunities, and that's why our government has taken a very firm position to say that we need to improve on job creation strategies across the board. The government, the public sector, the private sector has to play a major role. That could assist because most of the people who move into urban centers are looking for jobs basically, and that increases the pressure in that particular area. That has been the most challenge. But also we are saying, let's begin to improve on our strategies where people live. For example, there's a very strong focus on rural development because some of the people are coming from rural areas looking for better opportunities for living, and it's a human reaction that anyone who needs to live a better life will then go to urban centers. That increases pressure not only for human settlements, not only for housing, but for many other basic services such as water, such as electricity, roads, infrastructure, and so forth. So our new approach is to be very holistic, to be more integrated, and to try to develop our places where people live and make sure that the movement of people is taken cognizance of.
In my research, I came across a very interesting statement that reads, the government has set itself the ambitious target of trying to eradicate the state's 2.3 million housing backlog and in the coming years, after which it may end provision of free state housing. I didn't want to sound like I'm saying free state. So free state housing. Is that true?
That's very true, but I think whilst it's true, we need to give a very clear perspective. In 1994, when the democratic government evolved, it was very clear that we were dealing with a huge backlog in the housing arena. And that therefore made the government to make a conscious effort to reduce that challenge and the backlog that existed. And in the last 20 years, we, as I've said earlier on, we pride ourselves for the work that has been done. But this can't be an ongoing arrangement because it's not sustainable. But in dealing with that challenge, we've got to also look into other related and interconnected challenges that needs to be dealt with. It was a conscious effort, it's a correct decision that was taken, but it's not sustainable. So we have to begin to say, how do we create economic opportunities for our people so that the dependency syndrome gets reduced to a certain level? And for your information, Mr. Mateza, this is the only country in the world that provides a free housing arrangement. But it makes a lot of sense if you begin to understand our historical challenges as the country that we have been dealing with. The government would have not done nothing when we know exactly where we come from and where we want to go. But from a sustainability point of view, we need to up the game a little bit and begin to look into other strategies to make sure that this delivery is sustainable. That is the context within which this arrangement has been made.
Both of you could respond to this. Urbanization is a worldwide phenomenon, and it takes place, it affects the industry in South Africa, it affects the mines. We've seen what's happened to places like Marikana. Therefore, we're faced with this challenge of dealing with rapid urbanization.
It is important to note that in every country globally where there's economic activity, there's an attraction of people going to that closer to the economic activity. Why? Because people are looking for jobs, people are looking for better lives, people are looking for urbanization. And that's what we call, we're not saying people in the rural areas are not civilized, but people want to move closer from the rural area and say, I'm going to an urban area to look for opportunities. And that's where the government, we as the private sector, need to work with government in partnership and develop policies that will address those dynamics.
Mr. Zulu, do you want to add to that, the little time we have left?
Yes, it's a reality, and again, it's a natural reaction, and urbanization is a global challenge. All countries in the world, they do have that. The most important aspect is how do you respond to urbanization? What kind of effective strategies do you put on the ground to deal with urbanization? If you don't do that, then you'll live with this challenge forever. And that is why also our country is part of UN Habitat 3, where we begin to look globally at the challenges of rapid urbanization. But it's all about opportunities, as Mike has indicated. People will always look for better life, for better services, for improved quality of life. And this is what human settlements is all about. So we've got to put effective strategies to deal with the challenge of urbanization, because what it does, it puts pressure on urban centers. And as we can see right now, in most areas throughout the world, urban centers are under pressure because there's more energy required, there's more electricity required, there's more basic services that are required to feed into that situation. So it is a challenge, but it needs to be dealt with through very effective strategies on the ground.
When we come back, we will go into the social contract that was developed at the summit in Sandton, and we'll discuss that last week. If you'd like to join us on today's discussion, please, you can call us on 011 714 5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Rights and Recourse. We'll be back after the break.
Thanks, Mom. Have fun. You too.
Welcome back. On Friday in Centre in Johannesburg, the Department of Human Settlements and all stakeholders in this field signed a social contract that reads, "We, the signatories of the social contract, jointly undertake to work together to deliver in the next 5 years 1.5 million housing opportunities, including 110,000 affordable housing opportunities for the gap market, 70,000 affordable rent opportunities and infrastructure in informal settlements, eradicate the backlog of title deeds for pre- and post-1994 housing developments." The problem is, Mr. Zulu, is this a pipe dream?
Absolutely not, Mr. Mateza. We have come to a point where we've got to put tangible targets of what we want to achieve in the next 5 years. And part of the social contract that Minister Sisulu has arranged with the department and the stakeholders, it's meant to cement some of the commitments that have already been made from the budget speech that has been made on human settlements, the budget processes that will be embarked on for the next 5 years. We've got to know how we're going to be using the state resources to realize our vision. But most importantly, we understand very well that government alone cannot do this mammoth task. You require strategic partners, you require the mining sector, as Mike has indicated earlier on, you require developers, you require communities, and many other stakeholders to form part of this arrangement. Now, the targets that we have just made reference to cannot achieve themselves. You need human capital, you need skills, you need progressive organizations that can assist, you need the business sector, you need the Chamber of Mines, you need quite a number of people to say, can we plan together, can we implement together, can we work together? And also the state resources are not increasing. We know the global challenges, the market challenges, so you need different partners who can play a very meaningful role to realize your vision for the next 5 years. If we don't do it in the beginning, when are we going to do it? So we felt right from the onset, before we start implementing our vision, let's bring on board all the stakeholders and get into a social contract pact.
Mr. Teke, the gauntlet has been thrown down to the private sector, and I know, as I said earlier when we were off the cameras, that some of the problems that are bedeviling the Marikana problem, which is before the Farlam Commission, has been housing in that part of the world.
The most important point, Mr. Mateza, I was encouraged when Minister Sisulu invited us with Mr. Zulu to a meeting as the Chamber of Mines to update us on the planned social contract that the Human Settlements Department was putting together. And we were encouraged, and we said we will participate. The reason for that is, one, we feel that we cannot solve the housing problems on our own in this country. We cannot wait for government as well to do it on their own. And therefore, if you look at mining areas where mining is predominantly taking place in South Africa, let's start with Rustenburg, specifically where Marikana is, Lonmin, Anglo Platinum, Impala, Aquarius, and others. You go to the coal mining areas, you go to the gold areas, you go to iron ore, any area in South Africa. We have made a commitment that as the mining industry, we will partner with government in ensuring that we try and deliver on this housing promise that is put on the table. We will try and provide commitment, provide support to ensure that the ministry delivers on the 1.5 or the target that's been put on the table. We're not going to ridicule that. Let's go to the Marikana situation. Yes, there were challenges at Marikana, and we know that it's still part of the Farlam Commission that has investigated this issue. The Commission of Inquiry has gone through that. I believe that has highlighted that beyond labor relations matters that we were facing, the communities get involved because they start to say, we, the communities where the mines operate, we want to A, be recognized, B, benefit out of what these mining houses are getting involved in terms of procurement opportunities, in terms of housing, in terms of other amenities that are available. So we take cognizance of the fact that we need to make a contribution.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I just want to go back to something that I've been talking about. In the old days, mines used to build, or even if it was hostels, at least some of them were inhabitable, some of them were habitable. But they were also building houses for married staff, and you had the married quarters and the hostels. And all of that stopped. What happened?
Nothing has stopped, Mr. Mateza. You need to understand the history of mining in this way, that historically we come from an environment where we had the migrant labor system, where we brought labor from Mozambique, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Lesotho, and the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, and we brought them into these mining areas. We built hostels. In some cases, houses were built. In some cases, villages were built in those mining areas. And you end up in a situation where, because they are not integrated into the broader economic activity in the country, the day the mine closes, then you're living in a situation where what do you do with those villages or environments? We've converted hostels from groups staying in one place to living quarters for either single sex hostel, single environments for each employee or family units. Beyond that, we started giving living out allowance, and we know that the living out allowance has led to some unintended consequences because people took their money for something else beyond paying for housing. So that complication, the mining industry is tackling it directly. How? We are partnering with government to say, one, where we have land, serviced land, as Mr. Zulu says, that is important. We have donated the land to government to say, use that land, it's serviced land, we will provide support, let's build houses. Is it for our employees only? It goes beyond that. It's for the communities within which we operate. So we've learned lessons from the past, which were caused by the way the mining industry was structured.
Mr. Zulu, the social contract also makes provision for, in other words, reviving old mining towns, as Mr. Decker was referring to. How are we going to do that? Places like Alexander Bay, Port Nolloth, all of those places.
We have already, it requires resources for starters, but again, it talks to the new strategic direction that Mike is talking about, that we want to begin to do this differently, because we're also correcting the wrongs of the past. And you need partners to do so. So the government, the first thing that they did was to put resources specifically just for the mining towns. And we've identified them, we've identified areas, we have done feasibility studies, we know exactly what needs to be done where and how it should be done. You know that it's not one size fits all, and there are also different policy instruments that we need to use. And it's quite right, that legacy, it's still living with the mining industry. You still have people who are not interested, for example, to own a house. They just want to come and work and go back into their respective homes. That challenge is still there. Now, how do we do this together? How do we provide different policy instruments from a human settlements perspective that can deal with different categories? The government for this financial year has put 2.1 billion aside specifically to deal with the mining industry. We have also allowed one of our agencies, which is HDA, to be the project manager in charge of focusing in the mining town areas. And in that way, we are beginning to say we can't just have a talk shop about this. What can we do on the ground? But we have also established strategic relationships with the mining industry. The Chamber of Mines is on board. We have had meetings. They are part of the pact that we had. They are playing a very meaningful role, as you have indicated. They are also contributing their own resources to say we can't just look at government doing it by itself. We are here to work together to rebuild and reconstruct the lives of our people.
Without being pedantic about this issue, the other thing Mr. Decker referred to it was upgrading the hostels to be living areas. How is that project going? All hostels, even in the cities, there are hostels.
Let me start by saying in the mining areas, Mr. Zulu, sorry about that. The gold industry, Harmony, Anglo Gold, Ashanti, Sibanye, that is Goldfields, and all those companies have initiated those projects. They are advanced. Most of them have been completed. You go to the platinum sector in the Rustenburg area, they are advanced. Most of them have been completed. Coal, it's advanced, they've completed. The point we're making is that we cannot operate in an environment where you start a mine and you start saying, I'll build a hostel the way it was built in the 1950s and 1960s. That has changed. And that's the contribution we're making to ensure that this country can advance. If we think mining, which everybody believes, has still got a great future in this country, we need to advance with the times.
Mr. Zulu, do you want to add to that? Because there are hostels in the urban areas.
I think Mr. Teke is making a very important point, but you'll also understand it's also in the interest of business to have workers and employees who live in quality conditions, because that's what makes them productive. And in that arrangement, it makes our work a little bit easier as well, because we all have a vested interest in making sure that the mining town areas are addressed efficiently and with speed, because failure to do so will render us very ineffective in the delivery of houses. So it's a joint venture, if I were to put it like that, between the public sector and the private sector, particularly in the area of mines. And it's working very well. All the areas where there are mines, I can assure you, we've got plans of how we're going to tackle this problem. And that is why we say, but we can't do it alone. We need all relevant stakeholders to form part of this partnership. And it's working very well as we speak.
The other question for me, Mr. Teke made reference to it, the availability of state land has always been a major stumbling block. Obviously, with a state land audit that was undertaken by government, this should be a thing of the past. But I hear Mr. Teke making the mines have made a very generous offer.
The issue of land is of course a big challenge, because our human settlements perspective has changed quite radically in terms of delivery. We are looking for prime land in areas where we know it's habitable, and it's very challenging to find that kind of pieces of land. But with the private sector, because some of it is in the hands of the private sector, we are in negotiations with them to make sure that we get them on board.
Mr. Zulu, just hold our thought. Let's take this call. Probably people are phoning with their airtime. They might run out of airtime. We have a call from Anna from Gauteng. Anna, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Hello.
Hello, Anna.
Yebo baba Tinjani.
Sikhona kunjani? What is your question?
My problem is that there are some people that are occupying my daughter's house in Atteridgeville. So we have got a will and we have got a letter of High Court. But the space there that the houses have been built, it's inside the location, but there is no title deed. So we've been waiting for the past 3 years. And the city of Tshwane keep on telling us that very soon they will give us title deed. But there is no thing of title deed at the present moment.
Thank you, Anna.
We've been waiting for quite a long time.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Let's deal with that. Mr. Zulu, the social contract does talk about eradicating the backlog of title deeds.
Absolutely. It's a very important aspect of our work for the next 5 years. We have agreed with the Minister, Honorable Minister Sisulu, that this matter must receive urgent attention. We have also decided to bring on board an estates agency to assist us, because it's a very skilled area, and they've agreed to work with us on this matter. Title deed is a very important aspect of homeowners, and in the absence of it, it becomes a problem. But it's also an economic asset that people can use to leverage other things for a quality of living, and it is within that context as well that we have prioritized this matter. It's on the program, we have a plan for it, we are implementing it. We are dealing with all title deeds across the board, pre and after, because it's a very important aspect of the homeowners.
If you'd like to join us on today's discussion, please call us on 011 714 5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Rights and Recourse. We'll be back after the break.
We really know the hype is about the new and how about the new cabinet will actually perform. But what role should then the media be playing at this critical stage?
I would hope that the media will give the newly appointed people a benefit of the doubt.
Has the media lost its respect in this regard? We want you to tell us.
The many factors that are hidden from the public in terms of this ought to be brought out by the media.
Watch Media Monitor with me, Alicia Jali, Sundays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back. We still continue our discussion with these two gentlemen in the studio here, Mr. Mike Decker from the Chamber of Mines and Mr. Tabana Zulu from the Department of Human Settlements. Mr. Zulu, I've always wanted to ask this question. Why were the houses built after 1994 called RDP houses?
I think you'll also get a very clear perspective that 1994 was the beginning of a new democratic dispensation in our country, and we wanted to reconstruct our people. So it's in the context of reconstruction and development. That's the context of it. But it's a particular terminology at a particular epoch in an era of development, and I think the terminology emerged from that understanding. But as you know, in 2005, Minister Sisulu introduced Breaking New Ground policy, BNG policy, which is what we talk about now mostly, because it also changed the context within which we're providing human settlements to our people. So from one epoch to another, the terminology will be used so that it remains relevant. I think that's the context within which we refer to RDP houses, because we're reconstructing the lives of our people from scratch, basically.
The other, talk about 2005, you had another social contract drawn up in 2005. How different is that contract from this contract?
I think it's an elevation. In 2005, it was a very theoretical based process to put meat together to make sure that we move to another level of delivery, and we change the face. It's like a facelift process, if I were to put it like that. And this particular pact differs in the sense that we are now in the implementation of all the thinking that went into BNG. We're putting it into practice. We'll also remember that in 2009, Honorable President Jacob Zuma announced the Department of Human Settlements, which was originally known as Department of Housing, because the context has changed, and it was influenced mainly by the BNG policy framework that has been created, which is more holistic than just putting a housing unit on the ground. So that's the context within which we have moved from that particular pact into this one, with more focus and emphasis on the implementation methodologies to realize the underlying philosophy of the BNG.
Earlier, I made reference to the fact that South Africa is a huge construction site. And when you are a construction site, there should be development of skills, artisans, and all of those things, including the mines that are laying off people from the mining sector. They can retrain those people to become builders and carpenters and all of those things. Is that happening in this industry?
Indeed, it is happening. You will also recall, Mr. Mateza, that we have just introduced a degree on human settlements, and its fundamental focus is to make sure that we begin to usher in some very relevant engineering skills that will make this sector to grow and sustain itself. These are the skills that are hardcore skills, and they are very rare in the market. But we have taken an initiative. It's running pretty much well with the University of Nelson Mandela, and the interest that it has engineered on the ground, it's amazing. That's part of doing that. But also, we are working very closely with the Department of Education to make sure that the core skills that are relevant for the construction industry must be taken cognizance of, so as to realize our challenges on the ground. And it's working pretty much well.
Mr. Decker, you probably want to respond to what I spoke about, the retraining of miners if you are laying them off on the mines.
You know, the most important thing with housing, specifically in the mining industry, the Minerals Petroleum Resources Development Act and its mining charter, we talk about the social and labor plans. Those social and labor plans evolve and are developed in an integrated manner. So you don't only talk about housing in isolation. You go to a municipality, you're talking about an integrated development plan where you talk about how do you provide for housing, roads, lights, electricity, water, and beyond that, the skills. In other words, the human resources or the human capital to develop those houses. So if you look at our social and labor plan commitments, they cover all those areas. The most important thing is about integrated development planning. In other words, you can't have things in isolation. You can't build a house and say 2 days later, there's no road. Where do I pull electricity? Where do I get water? Where do I get the other amenities? Therefore, the skills that build that house from a human capital point of view are critical.
Mr. Zulu, Mr. Mike Taker just mentioned something about you can't just build a house and don't have other aspects to it. I seem to remember that housing was meshed with sanitation. What happened? It looks like sanitation has gone to water affairs.
I think let's understand once again the concept of human settlements as it differs from the concept of just delivering housing. The human settlements is much more elevated in terms of its perspective, because it's not about just putting a housing project on the ground. And Mr. Teke has just made a very good point on that. When you put human settlements projects, there are basic services that needs to be integrated with that project. It's not just about putting a housing unit. There is water that is required. There is sewage that is required. There's roads, health, clinic, and many other social amenities, churches, and so forth. Because it's about the totality of human living. It's not about just the unit. It's about the socialization of the communities. So all these aspects, they now form part of human settlements. So the understanding of putting sanitation component with human settlements was to make a point that housing is not just about the structure. It's not just about the unit, but it's about all associated basic units to it. That is why we have a very strong working relationship with the Department of Water Affairs and Sanitation, as has been announced by the President, because the two must be integrated. Integrated planning becomes central in how we deliver on the housing projects. It's very central. Without that, it's going to be very difficult to realize the underlying philosophy of human settlements as a mandate for our department.
Since you are there, quickly, the 1994 document, the Reconstruction and Development Strategy, I quote, says, breaking down the geography of apartheid through land reform and more complex cities, is this the cornerstone of the social contract?
It is. We were beginning to say, let us also begin to change the apartheid patterns of delivery. You'll notice that it has been very difficult to move away from the way we are geographically located in terms of human settlements trajectory. And that is a challenge. And part of the social pact is to say, let's begin to develop integrated communities across the racial spectrum. And that will be informed by the manner in which we integrate our approach. We identify spaces, public spaces, where human settlements and social amenities must be, and change the apartheid pattern that has been with us for so many years. That's part of the pact that we're entering into with our stakeholders.
We have another caller from Durban, Mrs. Lachman. Mrs. Lachman, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon. I would like to know from you that my husband passed away 18 years ago and he left huge pieces of vacant land, and these lands have been invaded by the squatters. And now the rates on the land is incurring from the time he died till now, and I'm prepared to pay the rates, but the thing is that I'm not prepared to pay penalties and interest. But what do I do with the land? Because the thing is, I went there to remove the squatters, but the squatters took out their guns and knives and things for me to kill me.
That's a very important question from Mr. Lachman. Thank you very much, Mrs. Lachman. We're going to try and have these gentlemen answer the question, especially Mr. Zulu. I think if you can answer that question with land invasion, I think this is what's happened here. Land invasion, where people walk in and they build. And also, please talk to us about your relationship with the International Slum Dwellers Association in the same breath.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mateza. I think the issue of land invasion, it's something that we do not promote as government. And there are various institutions locally where there is land invasion that take cognizance of that. And I'm sure that the caller has also touched base with the municipality in charge of that particular area, because there are various measures that must be put in place. For example, if you want to remove people from a land that was invaded, you've got to make sure that you have identified another area where you can move them, and that calls for resources. So there is a process that is in place, governed by the law of this country, of how to deal with situations like that. And I will recommend that the local municipality in charge of that particular area where land has been invaded, they take a responsibility of dealing with the matter and make sure that all parties that are involved are happy with the outcome of that process. And our relationship with international slum dwellers is insofar as policy development. These are the people who can tell you exactly what does it mean to live in a shack, how does it feel, and what needs to be done, and how do you then reshape, review your policy involvement when you deal with informal settlements, because they are better placed to be able to advise even the government how to do it. This relationship is therefore assisting government, assisting human settlements to look into our policies and make sure that when we deal with the issue of slums, of shacks, of informal settlements, we understand exactly what we're dealing with here. We can't be experts in an area that we are not directly involved with. And our relationship with them is to assist us, is to work together with them, assist them as well with skills development areas, and also invite them to assist us where we need their intellectual capacity to develop our policies to be more sound, to be more practical and easily implemented on the ground.
Well, I'm told we've got another caller from Durban, Bongani. Bongani, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Yes, how are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
My greeting to my boss, Tabani Zuli, know me very well. I know him very well from Pietermaritzburg. Hello, my chief.
I'm fine, how are you?
Yeah, yes, Tabani, I think my contribution to this topic will be, I wish can sort of review the policy as far as granting a subsidy to the youth. I mean, I cannot imagine someone who's 21 years old applying for the housing subsidy. That person's supposed to be aspirant for his career development and everything. Because what normally happens is they take these houses and rent them out. So I wish the policy can actually focus on very needy section of our society, like say your elderly people or the mother that live with children and everything, but not just a simple straight youth coming to apply for the housing subsidy. Because basically the resources are limited. I mean, if we widen this source demand, we're never able to meet all this demand. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Bongani. Great call there by Bongani. I want you, when you answer that question, put it together with this question that was raised in Parliament, where the Parliament said there are 2.3 million houses built, and a member of the opposition party turned around and said, no, there are 233 subsidies paid out, 2.3 million subsidies paid out, and those do not represent the houses. Can you answer those questions together?
Let me start with the question raised by Bongani, and the Minister Sisulu has been very strong on this particular issue. We are saying let's begin to deal with the issue of youth differently, and part of this pact was also to deal with the issue of youth brigades that needs to form part of creating employment opportunities for the young people. But to simply give a grant to a young man where he was supposed to be working or at school to empower yourself so that you are employable, it's a bit of a challenge. But and I like the point that he's making, that we need to look into our policy and make sure that the policy is able to talk into that, because in the same vein you cannot disadvantage a competent beneficiary if in terms of policy you have to get that. But it's a matter of reviewing our policy, but again to bring other elements of our development agenda, to make sure that we have our young people at school, attending to school, getting their relevant skills so that they're employable in the sector and create an employment opportunity for themselves. That's the most important thing. Coming to the issue of our delivery, our figures are very clear. We have delivered 3.6 million houses in the last 20 years of our democracy. Our backlog is sitting at 2.3 million as we speak. Our agenda, our pact that we have signed recently talks to 2.3 backlog that we have to deal with, using different policy instruments, by the way, not just BNG houses only. There's a rental accommodation component, there's social housing component, there's a community residential unit component, there's PHP component. It's to use different policy instruments to deal with that backlog. But that's the figure that we have at our disposal that we're dealing with.
Well, when we come back, we will be talking about finances. So how are these houses going to be financed, even those on the mines? But first of all, let's hear what Mrs. Lachman. Mrs. Lachman, you seem not to be happy with the answer you got.
I'm not happy with the answer. The reason why, that the gentleman said that I must liaise with the municipality regarding their land invasion. But when I went to the municipality said to me that because the land belonged to us, it is our responsibility to make sure that the squatters, and we don't allow people to come and squat over there. But they have gone there and invaded it themselves. I don't need the land. I need to, if the municipality wants to buy the land from me, I'm very keen in selling it to them. I don't have a problem with that. If the people don't have houses, it's fine. They can buy the land and build the houses for them. But the thing is that the rates
Mrs.
and
Lachman,
penalties, interest, and everything
Lachman,
is just incurring there.
Mrs.
I, being a
Lachman.
widow, I have to find the money now to pay for it.
Mrs. Lachman, thank you very much. I think you've answered your own question. I think the better thing is probably get a deal from the municipality and sell the land to the municipality. If you want to join us today, please call us on 011 714 5497 or 5498 or tweet us at Rights and Recourse. We'll be back after the break.
A huge part of this African growth is technological innovation. Governments here are working hard to ensure that the continent's technology matches that of more advanced countries.
High-speed internet connectivity is regarded as a utility.
As the continent battles diseases like Ebola, social media becomes the preferred method to share information.
People on social media are some of the society's most influential.
To find out more, join me, Pumelele Zondi, on Network every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. only on SABC News.
SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Welcome back, and I did say probably I should ask Mrs. Zulu to just say a few words around the issues that were raised by Mrs. Lachman.
One of the critical issues, hence I refer the matter to the municipality, is the issue of rates. When you own a piece of land, you have a responsibility to pay rates. And with the situation that she's subjected to, I think they could come at a certain compromise with the relevant municipality to deal with the matter, because the issue of rates is critical. But also, if the land itself is developable for human settlements purposes, there could be some negotiations that could take place to deal with that challenge. It's in that context that I refer the matter to the local municipality.
Well, yes, let's take a look at what the Twitter community is saying around this issue. Rights and they say, Charlotte says, it's true, people rent out the RDP houses. They go back and live in a shack. I have two houses in, others have two houses on one stand. And then Sibutsa Mpule says, as a teacher, our salaries don't qualify to buy a house, and I don't qualify for RDP houses. The government is not helping us. I hope I'm correct. Tagleisha, hope I'm correct. It makes me wonder. I wonder what makes me wonder. Therefore, we need to, let's hear, probably we can get some answers to these questions, Mr. Zulu.
Yes, I can deal with the issue of RDP houses being sold to other people. To start with, it is criminal to do so. Our policy doesn't allow that, and where a matter of that nature is discovered and there's proof for it, we refer the matter for investigation by our law enforcement agencies. So it's one of those challenges that we have been faced with, but again, it addresses the whole notion of creating economic opportunities for the beneficiaries themselves, so that they are better positioned to sustain the products that government is providing to them. And part of the package that we're working on is to make sure in every environment where we deliver human settlements project, there must be a very conducive economic situation for people to be able to be employed and sustain these products. So it's a social problem as well, because at the end of the day, you can imagine when someone is not working, he was in the shack, and all of a sudden you can't sustain what you have. It's a human reaction that comes into the fore, but we don't encourage it, and it's unacceptable.
Let's please quickly take this call from Zwandile. Zwandile, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Molo, Tata, kunjani?
Sikhona kunjani?
Ndilapha eGauteng Tata, ikhona indawo apha yebond apha eBhoni, iCalfontein, duze neMidrand. Ingxaki yami bendisebenza eTransnet Tata Airport. Tata, ngoku ngaxoxa emsebenzini ngo-2005 indaba yestrike iTransnet izindlu zethu zithengise ebank FNB.
We'll try and answer your question. The question is, he has been working for Transnet and he lost his job after a strike, and now he couldn't pay for a house, and Transnet, to get their property back, sold the houses to the bank. That's what I wanted to get to, financing, including answering Zwandile. I want you to answer this question. Both of you can probably answer this question. There's been a reluctance from finance houses in partnering with government in the development and provision of housing in poor and indigent communities. It would seem that the social contract has debunked this myth, because I saw members from the Banking Association of South Africa at the Indaba.
Well, let me start with the mining industry specifically. If you look at that problem where people start talking about financing, how do we finance or how do we fund these big projects, especially housing projects? They are big. The mining industry, number one, have made a commitment. Let's take one company in the platinum industry that has already spent 2.3 billion rand in funding the development of these places. In Rustenburg, in the Eastern Bushveld, I'm talking about Beggarsfort, Impala Platinum specifically. They recognize that there is an issue of funding or financing. Therefore, what you do, you commit capital, you build those units, and you sell them to the employees, or you provide them as rental units. If you look at another environment, is to say, how do we, as the mining industry, the banking association or the banks, and other financial institutions partner with human settlements? And that's what the social contract talks about, where we say, how do we start partnering? Because I believe where there is a challenge, there is an opportunity. You know, every calamity comes with an opportunity. And the opportunity for us now is to say, how do we tackle this together? Because the day this turns against us, the service delivery protest will not only be municipality or government related, it will be about the country. So that's the opportunity for us. We are working with DBSA, with the banks, there is FLISP and human settlements.
Let's take one more call from Gabriel. Gabriel from Gauteng. Gabriel, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm okay. I just want to get a clear answer from Mr. Zulu, given the fact that the question was asked in Parliament as a figure that the government gave a subsidy to, which does not match the numbers that are built in South Africa. Because I did not get a clear answer there.
Mrs. Zulu, I think it goes back to that question I asked that was raised by an opposition party member in Parliament about 2.3 million subsidies that went out, and they don't match the number of houses that's been built.
I think let's look into this question in this context. When you deliver a house, it's not one person who benefits. It's also a household. It becomes a household, so it becomes a family. So, for example, you'll find that when we said we have delivered houses and 233,000 people have benefited in that particular financial year, it doesn't mean that that's a figure we have delivered. It's the beneficiaries who have benefited because it's a household.
Mr. Zulu, can you hold that thought? I need to go to a break now, quickly, our final break. Join us today in our discussion. You can call us on 011 714 5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Rights and Recourse. We'll be back after the break.
Ik geloof mij, ik is een kap. Ja, ik de paar bezig. Kom.
Welcome back. Before we answer all the other questions that my panel wants to respond to, let's take this call from Anonymous. Anonymous, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Yes, I'm calling from, I'm one of the Banye employees from the mine. The problem that we are facing regarding those houses is not clear to us because the companies are willing to charge us the amount of the bonds, which is about 200,000 or 230,000, of which we thought maybe those houses will be much cheaper for us as mine employees. So that's the challenge. And here at Sibanye, it hasn't started this process. We have been waiting.
Let's try and answer your question. We got the gist of the question there. Mr. Mateza probably should answer that question first around Sibanye Gold Mine.
Well, you need to recognize that each mining house, who are members of the chamber and beyond, when they build these units, the pricing models are different, and the types of houses that are built are different as well. Probably it's something that can be taken up specifically with that mining house. I'll give you an example. The houses which were built by Bafokeng Platinum in Rustenburg, which were handed over on the 26th of September, the pricing model is completely different to what you see in other areas. So that can be handled specifically with that mining house.
Mr. Zulu, final word from you.
The financial institutions have a very important role to play, and that helps us to deal with our backlog. With Human Settlements, we've got 3 financial institutions that are responsible solely to assist with that, which is Nature, NHFC, and Rural Loan. But very importantly is the commercial banks as well. That's why you saw them there, because we want them to also assist in providing loans to the people who are working, who are able to own their own houses through the banking arrangement.
Well, I must thank my guests for now. We end our program today with a quote from the first Minister of Housing in a democratic South Africa, the late Comrade Joe Slovo, and I quote, "Housing is not a privilege, it is a fundamental human right. To live in an environment of degradation is to produce a degraded people. We have striven endlessly for freedom and liberation. Now it is time to deliver. In itself, our freedom in itself was a miracle and did not deliver liberation. It has only provided us with a launching pad to build a liberated South Africa. The complexity of our task is not an insurmountable obstacle. It is an historic challenge which we must face and overcome. And together we shall overcome." Close quote. This has been Rights and Recourse. This program is repeated at 10 tonight and at 5 on Monday morning. From all of us in the studio, thank you to our guests and good afternoon.
Cameroon's economic capital, a unique art collection is on display. Titled Yesterday's Memory, Tomorrow's Memory.
We are trying to preserve this heritage despite many things that have changed in the designing, embroidery and the model.